for men who refuse to stay complacent. Welcome to the Upgraded Man Podcast with your host, Chris Anderson.
Jeff, we're going to dive right into it. Upgraded Man Podcast for men who don't want to be complacent, don't want to stay still, and you have not stayed still. You've built a mega business, multiple arms of it, so I'm super excited to dive into your journey. First, I would love to start, though, before we dive right into it, we've got a bottle here.
Yeah.
I would love if you would be open to having us do a little pour of it. And then talk me through why we picked this bottle specifically. Would be, I know there's a story behind it, so I'm excited.
Sure. Well, one of our guideposts for a lot of things we do in business in particular come from a guy who was Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger. And one of the things that Charlie said that resonated with us, and you saw up in the boardroom, it's on the wall in the boardroom, it says, always take the high road.
Yep.
It's far less crowded.
Yeah.
Right? And that was one of the things that Charlie said for 5 decades that I can think of, right? And so we had an opportunity with this whiskey to, pay a little tribute to Charlie. Sure. and his wisdom. But there are a couple other things about this bottle and this whiskey that are really cool that I think speak to a little bit more about who we are and how we approach what we do here at the distillery. So, talk a little bit about High Road, but if you take a look on the label, here on the bottom label, you see the truck. That's the truck that's out front of the building, and it's a truck that my partner Jim and I kind of designed from 3 trucks that we had.
Yeah.
Right, we took the parts from 3 trucks, and it took 3 trucks because we knew exactly what we wanted. Right, it's very intentional. It wasn't like mad scientist stuff. It was, this is what the truck needs to look like out in front of Hard Truth. And this whiskey that Brian Smith designed is it's a rye whiskey that is accessible to a lot of people in terms of it's a smooth rye, right?
Okay.
It's a little bit different. And Brian was very intentional about what he wanted to happen with this whiskey and really get people thinking more about rye whiskey, which that big distillery down in Lawrenceburg, really Indiana's it for rye whiskey.
Wow. Okay.
And anyway, just to give you a sense of how Brian works, and it's really kind of, all of us are kind of the same way about some things. And this whiskey's at 93 proof.
Okay.
I don't know if you go to the liquor store if you can find another whiskey that's 93 proof.
Right.
I remember talking to Brian and saying, "Why is it 93 proof?" And he said, "I said, wouldn't it be simpler just call it 90 proof, like everybody else does?" And he said, "No." It tastes better at 93. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, we've tested it. We've tried it at 92. We've tried it at 94. It should be a 93 proof whiskey.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the detail.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that intentionality about, trying to do everything, make that whiskey the best that you can. Right.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And, so it captures a bunch of things for me. You asked me to think about a bottle that really means something to me, and that idea of taking the high road, that idea of being very intentional about when you're designing a whiskey and who you're trying to appeal to and that kind of thing. It all comes together in this bottle for me.
That's really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd love to pour you some.
I appreciate that.
I'm gonna nose it this morning.
Sure. Yeah.
But to me, this is your campfire whiskey.
Okay.
Right? Because a little lower proof.
Yeah.
You can.
Thank you.
You can pass this bottle around and not get into too much trouble, right? And
it smells good. So if people if they're grabbing this bottle off the shelf and they're coming in, what are some things that they should be trying to pick up on as they're smelling, as they're getting ready to enjoy this?
Well, first thing I'll say is you know, in the liquor store, you're not going to be able to pop the cork and
Right.
smell
Yeah.
it. But if you
Yeah.
get a chance to taste it, I always tell people, you know, you've got to use all of your senses.
Yep.
And, you know, you get to look at it. First thing you do is you see it, right? And you see the color, the richness of the color, that kind of, you know, that deep, rich color that it is. And that gives you some indication of, you know, how long it's been in the barrel, and that kind of thing. And then, you know, the nose is the gateway to the palate.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So that's where you're kind of really opening up to, you know, what that whiskey's all about. And, you know, Chris, if you do that and you open your mouth a little bit as you breathe in with your nose and just bring it all in, you know, it's really, and there's no right way or wrong way to do any of this stuff, but you want to get all that before you even taste it. And then when you do taste it, you give yourself a couple tries, right?
Okay.
Because you really got to open up all those, you know, it's like everything else in life. You've got to kind of open up to being receptive to things. And so that first taste, you know, take some time, pick up some notes. You know, you pick up a few flavors, maybe some vanilla or something else, and then that second taste is going to be very different because your receptors in your mouth are much more open to new flavors. So the second taste should be almost like a different whiskey. Yeah. Right?
That's crazy.
Yeah. But the difference is you just took the time to do all that.
Right.
Right?
And most people don't do that.
And you got to take
That's so interesting that the difference in those two sips.
Yeah.
Definitely tasted the vanilla on the first one.
Right.
The second one, so I'm not as versed in whiskey. I enjoy it. The second one, I can't put my finger or my nose on what that second one is. I'm not good with the flavors yet. I'm trying to be able to differentiate.
Yeah.
But it was different. It was like a smooth, like vanilla. I've definitely tasted that one, and the second one was like, I don't know if it's smoother or I can't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of what happens with that. That first taste kind of, you know, moves some barriers away, right? And you're more able to accept. You know, there's a little bit of heat with the rye, right?
Yeah.
And that second time around, you're ready for it.
Yeah.
Right. Your palate's ready for it, and that kind of thing. But this one is got more corn than our other rye, so it is easier to drink, right?
Yeah.
Corn is a little bit sweeter.
Yep.
And a little bit easy. It makes it a little bit easier to drink than say our high rye, which our high rye is 94% rye. That's a big rye.
Well, I appreciate you sharing and allowing me to sip on some of that this morning. And
can I tell you one more quick story about Charlie Munger?
Yes, please.
So I'm originally from Nebraska.
Okay.
Right. I was born in Nebraska, and my mom and dad moved out to Nebraska in 1953.
Okay.
And she went to work for a telephone company. And I knew that, and my mom passed away this winter, but last summer, she told me a story. She's 93 years old. She told me a story about Charlie Munger because she loved to talk to me about our business and what we were doing, that kind of stuff. So I was talking to her, and she said, Charlie Munger, squirrely little guy? I said, well, he is kind of squirrely little guy. And she said, I worked for him in 1953.
Oh my
He was
goodness.
a consultant to the telephone company.
Wow.
And I followed him around with a notepad, and I thought, how did I go my whole life without knowing that she actually had worked with Charlie Munger?
Wow.
Right? So
that's a cool connection.
things come
there.
around.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really neat. Now, have you ever been able to sit down with someone, have a glass of whiskey, or just present a bottle to that you're like, I can't believe I just did that? Like someone that you never, celebrity, political figure that you were like, this has opened the door. I've never would have thought I would be in front of someone like this or be able to connect with someone like this with it.
Well, you know, the I don't know, I guess you could call him a celebrity, but the guy who really has helped us with a lot of the things we wanted to do here in Indiana is Eric Holcomb, the governor, you know, the former governor.
Yep.
And he helped us get the Indiana Rye Act passed.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. But it was the poor that got us started.
That's
right?
cool. Yeah.
And so we've known him for a while. We had known him for a while. He was getting ready to do this big global economic summit, which people don't think of Indiana necessarily as a place for global economic summit. He called up and said, "Hey Jeff, hey Jim, could you do something for this global economic summit?" And we figured, well, there are 130 people. We'll need a barrel of whiskey to do this thing, but we created this Governor's Select, right, of our rye whiskey.
Yep.
And that rye whiskey went home with 130 people from all over,
Wow.
Representatives of all these different countries that came to Governor Holcomb's global summit. And before it, he called up and said, "Hey, I really respect what Fred Minnick has to say about whiskey. You think we could get him to come?" So we called Fred down in Louisville. He's one of the premier whiskey critics and veteran and that kind of thing. And he said, "Sure, I'll come for Governor Holcomb." And he showed up for this, for when we rolled out the whiskey for all these folks. And
wow.
That made it even more fun, right?
That's really cool. And yeah. Former Governor Holcomb's a great guy and a lot of fun to talk with and just hear his stories. And
he's got one of the coolest man caves.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet, but I'm sure it's got a lot of this stuff in there probably from you guys. And so, you talked about the bottle, even the truck, those details, building the truck from 3 different trucks because you had the idea of building something specifically that you wanted and not just, going with what was already there. You kind of done that here too. You kind of built something, I think you like to call it an adult Disneyland. Right. And you've pieced it together so it's an experience. Talk me through why the details here at Hard Truth Distillery is so important to you and what that opens up for those visiting.
I guess I'd start with a question, right? Because a lot of people say, ask me or one of my partners, they say, did you ever imagine? And we all say the same thing. We say, of course we did, right? You have to, I think, to be really successful and fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to open your mind and imagine things. And for this place, this piece of property, this beautiful, hilltop wooded place, sat here for a long time, really just being woods, and pretty neat. And I think I mentioned to you the other day that used to be called Firecracker Hill back in the day. And all kinds of people had ideas for what they wanted to do with it. And in fact, we've got some of the old plans where it was going to be made a golf course or a neighborhood, a planned community or that kind of thing. And anyway, we were the ones who hung in there long enough to acquire the property from the family trust that owned it. And that took a couple of years of going back and forth. And so we had a couple of years to walk the property and think about things and, what we really wanted to accomplish. And part of what we wanted to do was, we've always been from the original place that we had downtown in Nashville. We always appreciated the idea that we could create an experience, not just a beer, not just a great meal, not just a really cool looking timber frame building, but an experience for people. And, we learned a lot from those early days. And with here we had a blank canvas to work with, right? I mean, this beautiful woods. And, for example, I can remember one contractor coming in to give us a bid on site preparation, right? He came in and his plan was, he said, "We'll cut the top of the hill flat." He said, "That's going to save you," I forget how many, 100,000. A lot of money.
A lot of money.
We'll have and it'll be easier for people to walk around because everything will be flat. And, so let's do that. And we're like, "Thank you." We sent him back to Indianapolis, right? But because our idea was, to fit into this place, not to make it fit us. Right. And, it's like the terraces out back and the trails through the woods. It all just fits. It all just works. And we let ourselves be informed by the property, right?
That's cool.
But we took the time to, the funny part about that time we had to think about it was we'd sit up here, bring some whiskey, and sit under a couple of the trees that are out front here. They're still there.
That's awesome.
And we'd talk about things. And then eventually we got to the point where we're putting the engineer's flags out, like this is where Jeff says or this is where Ed says rack house needs to be, right? And it took a little longer. So then we started moving each other's flags, right? Like, I'm not going to let Jim tell me where that should be. But anyway, that process we got to is how we ended up with this like this. And it's just, a lot of fun, but it's all about, well, when somebody drives through the great gates, how are they going to feel?
Yeah.
Right? Like, why would you put all that effort into that great gate, right? It's just a gate, but it's not just a gate, right? That's the first thing. For folks who haven't seen it, there's the image of the spirit of the big woods, beautiful woman, right? And right away, you're going into something special. Yeah. So why not have a beautiful gate, right?
Yes.
And then as you drive up, what's the first thing that you see as you start to come to the top of the hill? It's that rack house.
Yep.
And it's at just the right angle, so you get a size, you get a sense of the size and dimensions of it, right? You're not just looking at the end of a rack house. And, everything's got to be
intentional.
And you've got to, and it's the way we see it, right? But we tend to think that if it resonates with us, and this is our experience, if it's something that resonates with you or me, it's probably going to resonate with other people, right? Yeah. And the best thing, the ultimate for me, is when you can evoke a memory from someone that's their memory, right? Where your place or the experience you're creating resonates with them. Yeah. Right? Right. And they go back to, I'm 8 years old again. I remember being in that cabin in the woods in Canada with my uncle, right? That kind of stuff. Yeah. Right.
And that's really neat. And I think, with memories too, like you mentioned starting downtown Nashville, Indiana, right? Thinking back to those memories, like, did you ever think it was going to get to this size? Did you think you're going to kind of just stay there? What was that like going, starting there, super small, to being able to grow to this?
Well, the first idea was that the town didn't have a craft beer, didn't have a brewery, didn't have a brew pub. And back then, Ed Ryan and I had started to invest in some of the commercial property in town. As we saw, we love Nashville, and we love the fact that it's a town that's whole deal is centered on tourism and on people coming. You get generations and generations of people coming here, right? Right. Just like you come down here with your brother or with your kids, right? It's all part of it. And one of my first dates with my wife was in high school, when we came on a picnic to the state park here, right?
That's cool. Yeah.
That kind of thing. So we loved it. We wanted to do that, but we were always open to opportunity, right? Sure. And I talk about that sometimes, the idea that you have to be open to opportunity and kind of see it coming, right? And then if you're interested in that opportunity, you really got to go after it. Right. Right. So early on, we wanted this really cool brew pub, and we thought it would fit with other things we were doing in town, because we, like I said, we really wanted to be part of this community and the business community. Anyway, 3 days after we opened it up, and we had hand built this beautiful little timber frame. It's a very small building, but 3 days after we opened up, we were out of beer. Couldn't make enough beer. Jeez. Right? And so that's when, it was just a couple weeks later, we started to build a bigger brew system. Nice. Right? And then we thought, that we don't have enough seats, right? So we went from 36 seats, bought the building catty corner to the building we were in, and we had 300 seats, right? And then the historical society in town had a project to build a new historical building, and they wanted to sell the bowling alley. that we were in, the old
Yeah.
1959 bowling alley. So we made a deal with them, and we got the bowling alley, and we had the perfect place to build a nice brew system. So I'm condensing some time in there, but
Sure.
that's how we expanded into the brewery we've got today. Right?
And then you have Big Woods, the restaurant.
Yeah, still there.
Still there.
And the big pizza place.
Yeah,
And,
we ate that last night again. It was great
did you?
again.
Did you have a good time?
Oh, it was awesome. Great
Well, and that's really kind of the epicenter of the beer brand.
again.
Right?
Yeah, because Quaff On is the beer,
Yep.
and then you have Big Woods restaurants, and then
Yep.
Hard Truth Distillery, your whiskey and
Right.
rum and everything like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So running a business, building a business, it's not easy, right? There's ups and downs. There's things that you always have to navigate. So what were some of those times early on that made you go like, I don't know if this is going to happen? Like, did you have any of those moments, or was it all? Yeah. Tell us something about some of those.
Well, we had all kinds of ups and downs, but it all depends on how you look at things, right?
Yep.
So we, initially the town wasn't sure that, or some people in town, I shouldn't say the town itself, but weren't sure that they wanted a brew pub.
Okay.
Did they need a brew pub in town, and did they need a group of people at a brew pub that wanted to shut down traffic in the alley and have a party, back then what we called the rally in the alley,
Okay.
right?
Nice.
And put a band out in the street
cool.
and play some really great bluegrass music and
Cool.
and have fun. And we had to work our way through that with the town council and work through issues around whether tourism is really a great business or not for Brown County, because some folks said, restaurant jobs are not that great, that kind of thing. And a lot of times for me, when I think I'm right about something, somebody telling me I'm wrong is just such an incredible inspiration,
Yeah.
right? Motivator for me, right?
Yeah.
We always believed that you could create kind of a sustainable ecosystem in the restaurant business and that kind of tourism business here and create good jobs for people, right?
Right.
So, when some people say, those aren't such great jobs, I thought, well, that'll give us something to work on, prove that.
Right.
And, so we overcame things like that. And then, when you're financing everything yourself, there are times where you go, well, am I going to make payroll this week?
Right.
Or not, right? And that creates a lot of discipline for you.
Sure.
But it's can be stressful. And then, relationships are so important, like with bankers and that kind of stuff. And we had ups and downs with bankers, but I'll do a shameless plug for Community First Bank out of Kokomo. They've been a great partner to us, and like COVID, right? We were a couple of years into this place when COVID started, and that was a huge challenge, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But we had a great banker who helped us through that process with PPP and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we also, we had to make it work, right? So I remember went out and bought an extra 100 picnic tables, right? Because once we knew that places like Louisville and Chicago were closing, you couldn't do anything there, right? But you could leave the city for the weekend, right?
Yep.
So we let people in those cities know that they could come down to Hard Truth and they'd be safe. They could have their own picnic table, spread them out all over the property. And, those people from Chicago still come back.
That's awesome.
Right?
So it worked.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So, I wouldn't say it's making lemonade out of lemons, but really it's about, what's your attitude about that?
Yeah.
And can you create opportunity out of adversity?
Yeah.
Right?
Not being a victim, but trying to overcome in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Not just woe is me, but okay, this is what it is. What do I need to do to keep moving forward?
Yeah, you got to kind of, mindset. How you approach things is such a big part of it, right? And I do like to see the challenge and then figure out how we're going to make something good come from.
Yeah, and mindset is such a big journey in life. You know, we got all have to deal with so much, whether you're working a job, building a business, raising a family, being on your own. So what has helped you kind of keep that mindset of, you know, whatever comes my way, I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to keep moving and growing forward. I'm going to keep improving. What has helped you keep that positive kind of mindset?
Well, I've always felt, you know, in my case, you know, I've always felt like I'm responsible for more than myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think about what the implications are of me not making my best effort. And I've always felt like what I do impacts other people. I just think that's important to understand. So, you know, if I can work my way through things, I'm going to bring other people with me, right? And that is very empowering to me, if that makes sense, right? And, you know, I'm just wired to be more excited about a challenge than about a layup, you know, something easy.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So how do you lead through things like that if you have that mindset? Not everyone has a mindset like that. How do you lead people on your team, people who work for you who might not have the same type of mindset? How do you bring them along?
Yeah, well, you know, people are very different.
Yeah.
Right. And there are some people who should be leaders, and there are some people who, you know, are much more suited to a support role. There's some people who should be entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And there are a lot of people who should work for entrepreneurs, right? Or if, depending on their tolerance for risk and excitement, you know, maybe, you know, work in a more stable environment than an entrepreneur offers. But, you know, in our case, I think it starts with the people who are, you know, have created the vision and who have a direction they want to go. You've got to be able to communicate really well. But, you know, I think about what the majority of people really want. They want some degree of certainty, right?
Yeah.
And they want to be heard, right? So, you know, what I learned to do over time, which I didn't do as well when I was younger, was take the time to listen to people, understanding that process of them being able to talk about what they're concerned about and that kind of thing is just as important as the fact that they're concerned about it, right? But so I've become a better listener, but you still have to convey that sense that, I hear you and this is what I'm doing, but it's also about, you know, this is how we're going to work through it, right? And this is, you know, we don't necessarily know what the outcome will be. Like, you know, we talked about COVID, right?
Yep. Right.
I mean, that was like the big unknown, right? And it really, I mean, we're still feeling a lot of the impact of it and that kind of thing. But, you know, we when I say we, my partners have always, you know, we've been like-minded, and it's been great because we could convey that message to everybody that we're working with, and not just the people who work here, our partners,
right?
You know, the farmers we get grain from, all that stuff, and out in the marketplace, and but a lot of it's how you convey that. You know, it's got to be true,
right?
I mean, there's got to be something really true, and you know. Authentic is a word that gets used a lot now, but it is, you know, I mean, if people are going to believe you over time, it's got to be true, and you've got to, and they, you know, I find that people remember almost everything, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And that's good. And, you know, you mentioned kind of early on, you had to learn through some things to get to this point where you are as a leader. So early on, I know you've mentioned, you know, a little bit of a hothead, a little bit of more of a maybe, I don't know. So when you're younger, what are some moments that were maybe not so good that you were like, wow, I really messed that up, and you learned from it? Were there any really big moments of maybe how you reacted to a situation or how you approached one that was a big learning moment? Like, oh, I shouldn't have said that or reacted that way, or anything like that stands out in your mind?
Well, there there are a couple things that probably the youngest, you know, back when I was a Boy Scout.
Okay.
Right? And, you know, there were a couple times where, or one time in particular, where I realized that I was becoming what I didn't like when when I'm 13 or 14 and I'm the patrol leader. I was being the patrol leader that I didn't like when I was 11 years old, right?
Okay.
Because I was the boss,
yeah.
right? And that kind of thing. And it was one of the other kids' moms who actually pulled me aside one time and said, you know, Jeff, you're better than that, right? And it really hurt my feelings, right? But I'm like, she's right, right? So that was pretty early on.
Yeah.
But you know, a little later, I went to school at Annapolis, right, at the Naval Academy, and that was where I learned to fail. Right? People say, well, what about that experience? And yeah, it's really tough. You know, there are a lot of things that are very difficult about going through that experience. But once I learned that I couldn't do everything, right, and you know, was really disappointed that I wasn't, you know, the best at everything anymore, and that kind of thing. That changed my life too, because you can learn so much from your failures, and once you understand that you can learn from them, you don't fear them. Yep. Right. You know, like I can try a little harder, and if I fail, I'll learn from that and go on from there. So, those a couple of the early things, I guess.
Yeah, those are big things because you know, those failures. I feel like that's the moments I've learned the most is when I've messed up or when I've done something wrong. And I'm like, oh wait, that was wrong. That's why it was wrong. Okay, now I can do it better next time. Same as leadership, same in whatever it might be, fitness or just relationships in general. And with that, you know, you have a team around you. Tim, your co-founder, also your son-in-law, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did that work? Did he become co-founder before marrying your daughter, or married your daughter and then became co-founder with you?
So they were married.
Okay.
He actually, we had a bed and breakfast in town, and he ran the bed and breakfast. And the way we got started on the brew pub was he brewed beer on the back porch at the bed and breakfast. And what we saw pretty quickly, he set up a beer exchange, and his beer was always gone. Right. And so when we did have the opportunity to buy the little brown jug and turn it into Big Woods Brewing Company, it just seemed like perfect opportunity for him. Cool. But, you know, we were hard on Tim, right? Because and I were the investors, and we said, if you'll work for free for, he says it was 2 years. I say it was 1 year, but we wrote a contract. Yeah. Right, and said you work for free for a year or 2 years, whatever. Whichever the truth is. You know, you're 1/3 partner. Okay. Right, and he did that. Wow. Right, and my daughter did her part, and actually my daughter, Tim's wife, did a lot of the original beer art, the beer labels, and that kind of stuff, the images that we use today. Yeah. Right, so. Kind of a family thing. That's
cool. Yeah, and your son Ian is a part of the business too.
Ian's part of the business, a big part of the business, especially on the Hard Truth side, and you know, with marketing, and he's an integral part of. We have a kind of system of management here where we've got a leadership team, and he's the visionary on the leadership team.
That's awesome. Right. So what's that like? You know, son, daughter, son-in-law, all part of this with you together, like. That doesn't always work.
Yeah, and it doesn't always work. Yeah. Right? We have our ups and downs. Sure. But, you know, we start from a good place. Yep. Right? Which helps a lot. I think if you're trying to repair something from 40 years ago, that might be tough, or 30 years ago. But we, you know, we all love each other, right? And we all bring different talents. I think of it more as a work in progress. Sure. Right? So we don't always agree. Sometimes we hurt each other's feelings, but we always seem to be able to come back around. And, you know, it is a wonderful thing for me to be able to, you know, it's a dream come true, really, to be able to work with the people you love and to see them use their talents, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's probably tougher on them than it is on me.
Yeah. Well, it's really cool. Like I said, you don't see that very often, and I think you guys have the McCabe bottle still. The label?
Sure do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to you? Talking about family, going to the namesake McCabe, now on a label of its own that's going to hopefully outlive all of us. What does that mean to you? Where did that stem from?
Well, so my family's Irish,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid and we'd go back to visit where my mom and dad were from in DeKalb, Illinois, my uncles, my two uncles owned bars across the street from each other, right? There was McCabe's on one side and the Shamrock on the other. And, I kind of grew up with the excitement of that because they were cool places. And, my family, good Irish Catholic family, liked to party, right?
Yeah.
And celebrate and dance the jig and all that kind of stuff. And I always heard about the history of my family. The McCabes were one of the Gallo glass families from Ireland, and started out as Vikings who invaded Scotland and then invaded Ireland, and
cool.
that kind of thing. So I knew a lot about the family history, so I've always been proud of that, and I still have this massive family of cousins who, are different parts of the country now, but. So it means a lot to me. I think it means a lot to my family.
That's neat.
And, to have a great Irish whiskey, well, the only way it can be Irish whiskey if it's made in Ireland. So we imported we import McCabe's from Ireland, but it's great to be able to think about, well, how do I want to package it? I want to have great whiskey.
Sure.
I want it to be like the whiskey that there are different kinds of Irish whiskey, right? So very particular for my uncles in terms of what they liked.
Yeah.
And that's why McCabe's is a little bit lighter than some other Irish whiskeys. Mm-hmm. And, to be able to put the family crest on the label and then tell the story of the family on the back.
Yeah.
Tied into stories, that's what life is all about, right? Is having stories, sharing stories, creating stories. Right?
That's cool. And such a long-lasting story that's going to be told now through that bottle that's going to be able to be passed down. Do you have any good stories from your uncles? Those bars there, been able to hang around. You said they were cool places to be. Any stories you remember that you can tell?
Oh, sure. Well, my favorite one to tell is I'm the star of the story.
Of course.
Right? So back then, a kid could hang out at a bar, right? Back in the 60s, right? And at each of these were shotgun bars, and at the end of each bar, there was a stool I could sit at. But my uncle. And these being Irish bars, there's the long bar and then there's the pool table, right? And so I could play pool, right? And I had a little stool because I was too short, right? So I had this little. It was actually an old wooden beer box, that I could stand on and I could shoot pool from that box. But I was supposed to sit there quietly and that kind of stuff. But every once in a while there'd be a guy at the pool table that just thought he was too good or something, right? And if my uncle was careful about who he picked, but if the guy was a smart aleck or whatever, every once in a while I'd say, well, why don't you play the kid? And then I'd shoot pool with that guy, right?
Wow.
And I absolutely thought that was the greatest thing in the world.
And you won.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
great.
They took care of me.
Sure.
Right? They weren't going to put me in a position to lose, right?
Yeah.
Unless, so it was great.
That's cool.
Hustling
at
the
pool table. That's awesome.
A little bit, yeah.
That's cool. You talked about getting stories, right, from your mom. Did you get any stories from your grandparents from that whole journey, like coming over or anything like that?
I'll tell you my favorite story.
Yeah.
So my great-grandfather came over with all of his sons and that kind of stuff. They, like I said, they moved out to some of them in Chicago, some of them in DeKalb. And my grandfather went, Leo McCabe, And Leo went to France in World War One.
Okay.
Came back. He actually got mustard gassed in France, so wasn't ready to work on the farm when he got back. So they gave him a job as the postman in town, which is interesting. But he picked out the girl that he wanted to marry, Anna Reed, right?
Okay.
And Anna didn't want to have much to do with Leo McCabe. So I actually have the newspaper clipping from Shabana, Illinois, where on a Saturday night at the dance hall, the McCabe brothers showed up, and Anna was there with some other guy.
Oh no!
And the brothers just walked in, picked the guy up, and threw him out the window. Right. And then they left.
Oh my
right?
goodness!
Didn't say anything to anybody. Didn't try to be too disruptive. Just picked the guy up and threw him out the window. And so I was talking to my grandmother about it. I was probably 8 or 9 years old because it's a family story. And she said, "Well, Jeff, what was I going to do?" I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I had to marry him. Nobody else would go near me." Right?
That's awesome too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just picked him up, threw him out the window.
Yeah, just kind of quietly tossed him out. Right.
That's something.
Yeah.
Oh, but the rest is history. I mean, it seems
Yeah.
like it worked out.
Worked out great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So was he one of the brothers, Leo, or what? Did he send his brothers in?
He was in.
He was one of them.
He was
Okay.
the leader.
That's great. Oh man, it reminds me. I know it's not like Peaky Blinders type stuff in my head, like just walking in and taking ownership and taking over and.
What about that era, right?
Yeah, throwing the cat out the window. Yeah. Any other stories that they were involved in doing anything cool or fun or exciting?
Well, there are all kinds of stories, but I'll give you another example. So my Uncle Clark, the reason my parents moved out to Nebraska was to work for my dad was going to go to work for his older brother, who owned music stores. So owned 3 music stores in Nebraska. And like I said, Irish Catholic family, and my Uncle Clark was the most vocal of all of them and the most entertaining. Right? He loved to get on top of a bar and dance the Irish jig.
Okay.
And, he was very successful at business. Winning personality, that kind of stuff, and great at relationships. And he was big on supporting the church.
Sure.
And there was a what do we call that? A seminary where priests, learn to be priests.
Yep.
And there was one there in Lincoln, Nebraska. And my uncle's job there for the seminary was to not to recruit people into the seminary, but try to keep them there, because the prospect of being a priest forever. Some guys would get into the seminary and they just start to get cold feet or whatever. So part of my uncle's job was to keep these guys' spirits high.
Okay.
So he had a little lake house, and one of the things he did was he would take the guys for the weekend to the lake house and just have fun with them, right? And keep their spirits up, right? And have a higher graduation rate from the seminary. So when he died, decades later, I was an officer in the Navy by then. I went to his funeral, and actually to his wake, and it was like the most incredible party ever, because there were musicians, that he knew from the music business that were there to play. Yeah. There were these priests of all ages that were telling stories about Uncle Clark's parties at the lake and that kind of stuff. But, he made the most of every minute, right?
That's awesome.
And he did his part.
Yeah, he did.
For the church, right?
He did.
Yeah.
So if you were able to, if your great grandfather or great grandmother, your grandma and grandpa, if they're able to see what you've done to this moment, what do you think their response would be, or their reaction to everything you've been able to accomplish?
I think they would be very proud of the fact that we built something that has some legs to it, right? That it's going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, we try to treat everyone very well, right? We've got, they'd be proud of some of the same things I am. We have, in a couple cases, we've got 3 generations of the same family working here, right? We've got the high schooler, the mom or dad, and the grandma, right? All working here. And goes back to what we talked about earlier about, I think folks would agree now, 18 years from when we started the first brew pub, that the tourism business here in Brown County is a wonderful thing, and that we do create jobs that people can earn a good living and raise a family on, and that kind of thing. And we didn't start the tourism industry here, or we didn't create the original artist colony at all. But we really helped. We really helped. What the next generation of that is, and after us came the Brown County Music Center and those kind of things that, and other folks investing in the community, which is, so important. So they'd be really proud of that.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we make really good whiskey.
Yeah,
Can't beat that. And the beer, I was, where was I? Oh, I was out at the track this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
A woman grabbed me and she said, "You are legendary." And she wasn't talking about me. She was talking about the beer.
Oh.
Right? She's, Strawberry Blonde is the beer in Indiana.
That's like, awesome.
Well, that's nice.
That's good.
If my dad was there with me, he would have he would have soared, right?
Oh, yeah.
His feet would have come off the ground.
That's cool.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I made beer with my dad when I was a kid.
Gotcha. That's neat.
Yeah.
So same recipes?
No,
just
not
different.
At all.
Just the learning
Everything,
moments.
All the great beers like Busted Knuckle and 6 Foot Blonde. Those are all the fruit of Tim's mind.
That's
we
cool.
have we've got 3 or 4 great palettes here working with us. We've got Brian Smith.
Yep.
And Tim, and those 2 guys together can create flavors and understand the processes and that kind of stuff. And we've got another guy coming up who's our barrel manager, Chris Moore, really excellent. And we've got a couple more behind that where, what other distillery can you go to where you've got these great palates, these people with, with just, who've discovered their gifts, right?
Right.
The interesting part about that is Tim and Brian are both wonderful cooks.
Okay.
Right? And they do the same thing with food that they do with spirits. Right? They understand how flavors work.
That's crazy.
It's really,
that's crazy.
It's really neat.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it, like the flavors and the pairings of things that you wouldn't necessarily think about. But having that skill and having both of them here, is probably pretty amazing to watch and hear them talk through it all. Yeah.
It's an education every time. Well, the best part is when they, one of them comes in and says, "Try this."
Try this, right?
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think it just ties into the experience. Again, like we talked about the bottle at the beginning, like all the details you guys put into things like that, small things like that, to the whole experience here, and how, we talked yesterday about the experiences you guys are giving people. They're not cookie cutter. They can all be kind of customized, and you did that intentionally to make it the experience. So not only does it bring memories back from their past, but now they're making new ones that'll be memories that they can think back on here because it was so unique. Yeah.
A lot of times somebody will come for the first time, they'll take the I don't want to call it entry level, but they'll do a distillery tour and they'll get a sense of the place. They'll discover the terraces out back and that kind of thing. And then, they think about, they may see the bachelorette party that's doing the mixology class, and they're thinking, well, I could do that, or I could bring, I'm going to have my family here in Indiana next fall.
Yeah.
We could do something. And then they ask, they say, could we do this? And, a lot of times I want to make sure we're able to say, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
Right? We sure can.
That's cool.
So So the idea that we can be flexible enough and be good enough at what we do that we don't have to do things by rote, and that we can say, yeah, we can add that to the experience for you today, right? And or we can plan for something that is unique to you, like that tiki pavilion down by the big pond, right? You want to do your wedding down there? You want to have a barefoot wedding? Sure, we can do that, right?
That's cool. That's neat.
Yeah.
Thinking on stories too, that we kind of mentioned that those memories. I was told, and you don't have to answer this one. You have a story around 9/11.
Yeah.
That is a cool story, is what I've been told.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing that one?
I don't mind. Back around 9/11, I was working for American Express.
Okay.
And I was a senior executive there. I ran a big part of the business travel and corporate card business. And at the same time, my wife September and I had bought property here in Brown County back in the 90s.
Okay.
So like I told you, our experience here started back in high school.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, we had started to build our property out on Helmsburg Road, and we were living in Atlanta. Back then I had an office in Atlanta and an office in New York City.
Okay.
At the World Financial Center.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Friday before 9/11, you remember 9/11 was a Monday, I got a call from Ed Wagler, who is an excavator down here, and he was digging my pond. And I had always told him I'd like to drive the excavator. I had new experience, right? How to do that.
Yeah.
So he called me on Friday and he said, I'm going to be digging at your place on Monday. If you can be here Monday morning at 6 o'clock, you can give that excavator a try, right? So anyway, I called my guys and I said, guys, I'm not going to be there in New York on Monday for the meeting that we planned. I'm going to call in from Indiana, and that's what we set up. So we drove up to Friday afternoon. We drove up here to Brown County. Had a great weekend. On Monday morning, 6 o'clock, I was out on the property with Ed Wagler, and we got started. I went back to grab some breakfast, and my wife September told me, said, "Hey, look on the television." Right, and that's when the first images of the plane hitting the tower, the first plane that hit the tower, was on. I'm like, And then I called my boss in New York, and he was not at the tower. He was at our offices on 40 Wall Street. Okay. And first thing he said, Jeff, what's going on? Is there a parade today? There's ticker tape coming down outside the window. Yeah. And I said, Judd, you need to find out more about what's going on. You probably need to get going, right? Yeah. So that's how that all that started, and fortunately, I wasn't in New York, not because I wouldn't want to be there with the other folks, but because I could do things that they couldn't. Sure. Right. One of the VPs that worked for me was stuck on the train whenever all that was happening. The train stopped running, right? The subway stopped running. Yeah. One of them was stuck on the West Side Highway, just watching the buildings. Yeah. Right, and that kind of thing. So everybody had different experiences, but for me, hurried back to where Ed was at the property. Yep. And I told him what was going on. I said, I've got to leave, and he said, Jeff, let's kneel down and pray. And so we did that. I'll never forget that moment. And then September was ready. She had the car ready to go. We started driving back to Atlanta, and we did have cell phones back then, right? Right. So I had 2 cell phones, and that's where I was able to start working on what we needed to do, because when all that happened, all the computers were at the bottom of the World Financial Center. Yeah. And they went offline. Okay. Fortunately, we had a backup system in Phoenix. So it picked everything back up. So I was able to start coordinating, figuring out where first where all the American Express employees were around the world, and then all the travelers we had out. Because you can imagine how many travelers were traveling on American Express tickets, right? And we actually did that in several hours, right? We figured out, we were able to contact people and, let people, when people called and said, where's my mom, right? A lot of times we were able to tell them, right? But so in a way, it was fortunate that I wasn't there. I'm also fortunate that September's a good driver, right? Because she drove while I sat in the passenger seat and worked the phones, and we went from there. But that's kind of the meat of that experience.
Yeah. Would you have been in the towers?
I would have been at the World Financial Center.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Not the World Trade Center,
but the
next door.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. Maybe you gotta think back, like this whole journey. There was American Express, 9/11, then you have the 08 recession type thing hit. Then you've got COVID. When did you? I guess I didn't ask this earlier, but when did you kind of step away from American Express to kind of go full in on this dream? And
immediately after 9/11, at American Express, we had to start moving people out of the city to a building in New Jersey. It took a year to get that done. And then, American Express, like they did every 3 years anyway, was reorganizing. And it was just a great opportunity for me to leave, right? And, September and I talked about it. And Ian, who's back there, was just getting ready to start high school.
Okay.
Right, he was in 8th grade.
Okay.
And we said, "Do you want to go to high school in Atlanta at the big school, or do you want to go to the high school in Brown County?" And he said, "Brown County."
That's awesome.
And so I took the opportunity to leave then, and I was positioned well enough that I could pick up and go, and start doing what we did here.
Yeah.
We've done.
That's cool. From everything we talked about with that, so then the whole journey for this started. Is there anything we have missed along the journey that you want people to know about that they might not have known about, or that you maybe haven't shared before?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't talk about this a whole lot, but it's current, right? So we've got all the stuff going on with Iran and our military over there, and of course, we talked about the fact I went to school in Annapolis, and the year I was in flight school was the year that the Shah fell.
Okay.
47 years ago. Right. And so I was there when all those guys had to pick up and go back to. The next day, they all had to leave, right? And those guys came to the United States with a lot of money. Right, so they had this is a funny part of the story, but they had Corvettes and all kinds of cool cars, and if you were at the right place at the right time that day, you could buy a new Corvette for $300 because these guys were leaving. Right, they were just going. So that was one of the interesting things. But
did you get anything good?
I didn't. I was broke.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. I think we had our first baby on the way. Right.
Okay.
So $300 would have been a stretch for me back then. But then it wasn't much longer. I got through flight school and I'm out on the Forstall, USS Forstall in the Middle East. Right. And back then, there was all kinds of stuff going on with Beirut and the barracks that got blown up and that kind of stuff. And we never, for us, speaking for, people like me, naval officers, pilots, that kind of stuff, we could never do what we were capable of doing, right? And in a lot of ways, it was really disheartening. And my great hope right now is that we actually do find a way to have peace in the Middle East, right? And I will tell you, as I say that, it was 1978, no, 77, I wrote a paper for a foreign affairs conference there in D.C.
Okay.
And I said, there will never be peace in the Middle East.
Okay.
Right? Because there's no reason for them to.
Right.
And, here I am, almost 70 years old, right? And I'm thinking, well, maybe it could happen. So I'm very hopeful that we can have a real peace in the Middle East.
That'd be something for sure.
That would be very meaningful to me for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you see big changes happening, or where's the sights set on for business? You got anything big additions, big steps you're wanting to take, or?
Yeah. So we're in a growth phase with the distillery, and it's great to be able to think, okay, we're in 38 states now. We can kind of fill out our distribution network. This year we got a great start in California, and I think that bodes well for the rest of the West. But to be able to create out of Nashville, Indiana, a national brand, right, that is relevant, there's a lot more work to do, right? The experience here is at the core of that. This year we've had buyers from all over the country here during the barrel picking season, when retailers pick barrels and that kind of stuff. That just spreads the word about us. And when people come to the property, they just, they always say, well, you told me about it, but I never got it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So that's a lot of things are happening for us now that are, because we focused on the experience, and because we focused on the details, that, little things like, that's a real live edge cork on that bottle, right?
Yep.
Nobody's got a cork like that.
Yeah.
Right. And it's important. But, so those things are here on the property. We've just scratched the surface. We're just at the point where the team we've got here is real. I feel like the team we have, whether it's the tour guides or the people, the service people in the restaurant, they're really good at what they do. So now we get to be so much more, with discipline, be more creative, right? It's just like we talked about being able to customize that experience for you when you call and say, hey, I'm bringing not just me and the kids and the wife, but the rest of my family's coming, and I want to do something really special and different, right? But we're finally at the point where, with discipline, we can be even more creative and do more things. And when somebody has a great idea, like we went by the swings in the woods the other day, right? Very simple thing. But that wasn't my idea, right? That was one of the tour guides who said, well, we should have swings right here.
That's awesome.
Right? And they actually did it on a weekend when I wasn't around, right? But, we can do more and more with property. We've only used about 10% of the property, and we're good stewards of the land.
That's good.
And we can do more with it. So there's a lot more coming.
Yeah. So small percentage, 322 acres?
325.
25?
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And if people haven't been out there, you got to come out here and check it out. It's a beautiful property. They did an amazing job. And this has just been a good conversation. I appreciate you taking time to being on the show and talking through your journey, and just, I think seeing the details and things, having a good mindset with life, everything it throws at us. I think there's some good things people can take away from this. So last thing we do, and I'll actually have Kevin, if you can grab the journal from my backpack. We do what's called the upgraded journal. And so every guest leaves something in this journal for the next guest. And so this one, previously we had Dr. Carla Caturia, on, and she left something in this journal that we'll get once Kevin gets it over here. Let you respond to it, answer the question or respond to the quote, however it sits with you. And then we'll let you leave something for the next guest, quote or question. Here's the journal. It's a nice leather bound one I bought.
Sure.
Didn't make it.
Did you get it in Brown County?
No, I should have.
Yeah.
I know there's that leather store down here. I should have got it down here.
Yeah.
I got it before I was back down in this area. But Dr. Carla left this. Treat others the way you want to be treated, and treat yourself how you want others to treat you.
I say something similar to that a lot of times, right? And I try to have that mindset. Goes back to that first story I talked about when I was the patrol leader, right? And I had that nice mom straighten me out a little bit, right? It's, you know, that's the basis for almost everything, right? And I used to say, you know, we try to be inclusive, right? So a lot of times I'll just say everyone is welcome here, right? And I do think you have to treat people well. Right.
Absolutely. For sure.
And it all comes back to you.
It does. Do the right thing. It all works
tenfold.
out. Yeah. Absolutely. So what is it you would like to leave for the next guest we have on the show?
Well, this is this is something that had a big impact on me. Back in my American Express days, I got to host a golf school with a golfer that a lot of young people haven't heard of, but was really probably the greatest golfer of all time, Byron Nelson, right? And he was in his 80s back then, early 80s. But he and I would plan this golf school. We would invite C-level executives, and it would be just a handful, maybe 7 or 8, right? And each one would get their own pro and that kind of stuff. And the side story to it is that after 3 years, the 4th year we were planning, Byron said, you know, Jeff, you don't have to play this year. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, Jeff, you're not going to get any better, right? It was a little bit of a joke, but I really am not that great, not that enthusiastic about golf, but I love relationships and that kind of stuff. I loved hosting the golf course, the golf school. But so we get over that, and now we're sitting there having a cup of coffee in the morning. We're watching those 7 pros on the putting green. And he says, Jeff, he says, what do you see there? And I said something about, well, Tom was, you know, he's got a little different way he's holding the club. And he said, no, that's not it. He let me flounder for 2 or 3 times. And then he said, watch Jim over there. And Jim putts, and he misses, and the ball probably went 5 feet past the hole. And he said, now watch, you know, he had me watch 2 or 3 of them putt. And 2 of the other guys missed. And they both kind of ran the ball long, right? And he said, pros never putt short. He said, if you putt short, you never had a chance. If the ball never had a chance to go in a hole. He said, so whether it's golf or golf school or anything else that you're going to do, never putt short.
I love that.
So that stuck with me forever.
That's awesome.
Right.
I love that. That's good. Never putt short. That's real. I do like that. And so a funny thing. So my dad actually told me about this the other day, talking about Byron Nelson. He did a research on a relative of ours who played golf, was one of the top in Indiana, played against Byron in a tournament and beat him.
Wow.
As like a pro-am tournament type thing.
Right.
And my dad's writing this historical story through all that research he's doing. And so you mentioning him, that reminds me of that. He would love to talk to you about that sometime, I'm sure. But just the connection there is kind of cool. But never putt short. I think that's a great, simple thing to think about. Give yourself a chance, right?
Yeah.
At least give yourself a chance.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah. That's
if you
cool.
miss long.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
it's
awesome.
like failing.
Yeah.
Right. Better to fail than
never try.
Yeah. Not take a shot.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, again, thank you so much for sharing your time, sharing your stories, sharing your wisdom on the Upgraded Man podcast. Really enjoyed it. And congratulations on all you've done here and everything else that you're going to continue to do in the future. So,
well, thank you.